The word slipped out before he could catch it, and in that one fragile second, everything seemed to freeze under the harsh brightness of midday. The café was full, sunlight pouring through the glass windows, warming the polished floors and casting long reflections across neatly arranged tables. People laughed, cups clinked, soft music hummed in the background, but none of that mattered anymore. Because standing there, holding a tray with trembling hands, Armen Qureshi had just called one of the most powerful women in the city. Baby. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't even conscious. It was the kind of word he used at home, the kind that slipped out when his little daughter tugged at his sleeve or smiled through her missing teeth. But now, standing face to face with a woman dressed in quiet luxury, her presence commanding silence without effort, the mistake felt catastrophic. She looked at him, slowly, carefully, and then a faint smirk curved her lips. Not cruel, not kind, just intrigued. "Say it again," she said, her voice calm but edged with something unreadable. Slower. Armen felt his throat dry up. His heart pounded so loudly he was sure everyone could hear it. The tray in his hands felt heavier by the second, and for a moment, he forgot how to breathe. "Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the unexpected ways life can turn around, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Tales. Your support keeps these stories alive." Armen had never imagined his life would lead him here, balancing between exhaustion and quiet determination, trying to hold together a world that kept slipping through his fingers. Just 3 years ago, his life had been something else entirely. He had a small but steady job as a delivery driver, a modest home filled with laughter, and a wife whose presence made even the hardest days feel manageable. But life doesn't always give warnings before it changes everything. The illness came suddenly. Shortness of breath turned into hospital visits turned into whispered diagnoses, and whispered diagnoses turned into silence. By the time Armen understood what was happening, it was already too late. His wife was gone, leaving behind a quiet home and a 4-year-old girl who didn't understand why her mother wouldn't wake up anymore. Since then, every day had been a battle. Armen became everything: father, mother, provider, comforter. He learned how to braid messy hair in the mornings, how to cook simple meals that tasted like effort more than skill, how to stay awake through long nights when his daughter cried herself to sleep. He took whatever work he could find, eventually landing a job at the café, a place that paid just enough to keep the lights on and the fridge from going empty. But even that wasn't easy. The café sat in one of the city's wealthiest districts, where customers spoke in polished tones and wore clothes that probably cost more than Armen made in months. He kept his head down, did his work, and tried not to feel the invisible line that separated him from them. Until today. The woman in front of him wasn't just another customer. Everyone knew her. Zoya Karim, the self-made millionaire whose name was attached to businesses, charities, and headlines. People spoke about her with admiration, curiosity, sometimes even fear. She had built an empire from nothing, they said. She didn't tolerate mistakes. And Armen had just made one. The silence stretched longer than it should have. He opened his mouth to apologize, but the words tangled before they could form. He felt small, exposed, as if the entire room had turned to watch him unravel. But then something unexpected happened. Zoya didn't raise her voice. She didn't humiliate him or call for the manager. Instead, her smirk softened, just slightly, and her eyes lingered on his face, searching for something beyond the surface. There was something there she hadn't expected. Exhaustion, yes. Fear, definitely. But also something deeper, something steady and unbroken despite everything. She leaned back in her chair, her expression shifting from amused to curious. Armen quickly corrected himself, apologizing in a rushed whisper, his voice cracking with embarrassment. He explained it was a mistake, that he didn't mean any disrespect. His hands shook as he placed the tray down, trying to salvage what little dignity he had left. But Zoya didn't respond immediately. She simply watched him, her mind clearly working through something he couldn't see. For the rest of the day, Armen tried to forget the moment. He focused on his tasks, avoided looking in her direction, and told himself that by tomorrow, it would all be behind him. But life had other plans. When his shift ended, he rushed home like he always did. His daughter, Meher, greeted him at the door with a wide smile, her small arms wrapping around him as if she hadn't seen him in years. That hug, tight, warm, unconditional, was the one thing that made everything else bearable. He lifted her into his arms, exhaustion melting away for a moment as she giggled and buried her face in his shoulder. That night, like every night, he read her a story. His voice was soft, tired, but filled with love. She listened with wide eyes, her imagination painting worlds far brighter than the one they lived in. When she finally fell asleep, her tiny hand still clutching his shirt, Armen sat there for a long time, staring at the ceiling. He wondered if he was enough. The next day, the cafe buzzed as usual, but something felt different. Armen noticed it the moment he walked in. His manager pulled him aside, his expression unusually serious. Someone had asked about him. Not to complain, but to meet him. Armen's stomach tightened as he turned, and there she was again. Zoya Karim, seated at the same table, sunlight framing her like a scene from a film. But this time, her expression wasn't amused. It was thoughtful. What followed wasn't what Armen expected. She asked him simple questions, about his work, his life, his family. At first, he answered cautiously, unsure of her intentions. But there was something in the way she listened, genuinely, without interruption, that slowly eased his hesitation. When he mentioned his daughter, something shifted in her eyes. A memory, perhaps. Or a feeling she had buried long ago. Days turned into weeks, and their interactions grew, brief conversations, quiet observations, moments that felt oddly meaningful despite their simplicity. Zoya began to notice the little things, how Armen always checked his phone during breaks, how he smiled at photos only he could see, how he carried a quiet strength that didn't demand attention. And Armen, in turn, began to see beyond the image of the untouchable millionaire. He saw glimpses of something else, loneliness, maybe. Or the weight of a life built on constant pressure. Their worlds were different. Completely. But somehow, they began to overlap. Then came the day everything changed. Meher fell sick. It started with a fever, then worsened quickly. Hospital visits, worried doctors, expensive tests, the kind Armen couldn't afford. He tried everything, sold what little he had, worked extra hours, skipped meals, but it wasn't enough. And for the first time in years, he felt truly helpless. Zoya found out by accident. A missed shift, a hurried explanation, a look on Armen's face that said more than words ever could. She didn't hesitate. What she did next wasn't loud or dramatic. There were no announcements, no conditions, no expectations. Just quiet action. The best doctors. The right treatment. The support Armen had been too proud to ask for. And slowly, Meher got better. In the quiet aftermath of fear and relief, something unspoken settled between them. Gratitude. Respect. Understanding. Armen never forgot that moment, the day his daughter smiled again, the day hope returned. And Zoya, she found something she hadn't realized she was missing. Connection. The kind that couldn't be bought or built with success. As the story comes close to its end, if this journey touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like, comment, and share. Your support means more than you know. And before we close,